Welcome back everyone to another episode of The Road Chose Me. Today I'm going to dig into the topic of vehicle shipping. So maybe you're stuck on that little island called Australia. Maybe you want to drive the Pan American and you have to figure out a way to get your vehicle from Panama to Colombia. Or maybe like me, you've built a vehicle that you want to ship to a whole new continent somewhere else in the world and then go explore there. So if you've ever wondered how to get your vehicle across oceans, what are the options, how much does it cost, how long does it take, all of those questions are coming up on today's episode. So let's dig right into it. So there's a few different ways that you can ship your vehicle. Each one has a couple of different variations. They have their different pros and cons and they cost different amounts of money. So I'm going to go through them one at a time and I'll explain how they all work. But before I do that, I'll cover a couple of things that apply no matter which shipping method you take. And so the first one is like, how do you actually organize this or how do you go about it? And it's much simpler than you think. Basically, you find a big shipping port in the country that you want to leave from. Wherever you need to be shipping out of, there are going to be shipping agents and shipping lines there. And you can Google all of this. And chances are, if you start searching for like ship vehicle from Buenos Aires, you're going to start finding blog posts and posts on forums of other people who've done it before you, other overlanders. And they'll give you the name of the shipping agent or the shipping line. And so you can just contact them and say, I need to ship my vehicle from here to here. Can I get a quote, please? And it's that easy. That's their job. That's what they do. So they'll get back to you. And I like to get 5 or 6 different quotes and try to, obviously go for the cheapest, but also the most comprehensive one. Because when it comes to shipping your vehicle, it isn't only about physically shipping it from A to B. There's other things involved like getting it on or off the ship, dealing with the paperwork and the customs regulations at each end. Things like that come into play, and that's all going to have to be negotiated with your shipping agent or shipping line. But safe to say, once you've found a shipping agent that you like and they're giving you a good quote, that's where you proceed. And they're going to help you with all of the paperwork. They're going to say, go to this office, of customs and fill out this form, and they'll give you this stamp and they'll cancel your import permit, in that country. Then you're going to go to this docking yard and that's where you're going to load your vehicle. Things like that. It's all going to be explained to you and they'll help you along the way. It's not like you have to figure this out all by yourself in a foreign country. So that's kind of generic stuff, and the precise details on the customs requirements and the paperwork, it's going to vary by country. I mean, you'll figure it out. They're going to want a copy of your passport. They'll want a copy of the vehicle registration. If you're shipping into Australia, they're going to need your carnet de passage, things like that. What you need to decide now though is how you're actually going to ship the vehicle. The first way is what's commonly called roll on, roll off, or everyone always just says RORO for short. You can think of this just like a giant industrial ferry. So these ships are moving around the world and they're ferrying vehicles of all kinds, not just cars, but like tractors and transport trucks and dump trucks. And so it's a lot like a ferry where they drive them into this enormous ship, it'll cross some ocean and then they offload it at different countries. The real catch here, and the reason that it's different from a ferry, is that you don't get to drive the vehicle on and off the ship. Because the way it works is shipping ports around the world, they're pretty strict about security. Obviously, they have to be careful about what's coming and going from their country. And so typically, a foreigner like us, we can't actually go inside the shipping port. So what that means is, when you're using the RORO option, you have to give your keys to somebody else. They will drive the vehicle into the shipping port, and then someone from the shipping line or someone from the ship itself will actually drive it into the ship. It'll go across the ocean, then on the other end it gets driven out again, probably gets left lying around in the shipping port for a while, and then somebody else will drive it out of that shipping port and then you get your car back. So RORO is relatively straightforward in that regard, and it works really well if you have a ginormous vehicle or something that's kind of oddball and isn't going to fit inside a shipping container. RORO is probably the cheapest option as well. It's not uncommon to be able to cross an ocean for about $1,000, maybe up to $2,000, possibly $3,000, depending on where you're going in the world and how long that voyage is. Important to note also, you can't actually go along with your vehicle when you choose RORO shipping. You'll give your keys and your vehicle away, and then it's up to you to get to the destination port, wherever that is in the world. You'll fly there, you'll sail there. That's on you, and it's totally separate amount of money. So the real downside to RORO is that you're giving your keys to somebody else, which not only means they have to drive it, but it also means they have access to the entire contents of the vehicle. And so all of the shipping lines are going to make you sign a big waiver that says they're not responsible for any damage or anything that gets stolen. And they do this because they know so much stuff gets damaged and stolen. So I guess around the world, shipping ports are known for being places where stuff gets stolen and stuff disappears. And if you do some Googling, you're going to find hundreds of horror reports where overlanders build up a dream vehicle just like mine. They get ready for their trip, they RORO it across an ocean, and on the destination, half of their stuff is gone. Their fridge is torn out, the CD player's been torn out of the dashboard with a crowbar, all of their clothes and hiking gear. The list goes on and on. And to counter this, what a lot of people do is they try to chain up the inside of the vehicle. So in a Jeep like mine, you could try to chain up the rear tailgate here. You could put a big steel barrier between the driver's seat and the rest of the car, things like that. And you read mixed reports about this. Sometimes that makes the port workers even more determined to get inside because then they think you have something valuable in there. And the reality is, this vehicle's probably going to be sitting in the shipping port for multiple days, maybe even weeks if it has to transfer vessels to get from wherever it's going to wherever it's going. It's probably unlocked, the keys are probably in it, and realistically anyone that wants to can go over there and start trying to steal stuff or just rip stuff out of it. And there isn't a lot of accountability there. So although RORO is the cheapest option and it probably is the most straightforward, for me personally, my vehicle is so important and I've spent so much energy building it. To me, it's not worth the risk of having stuff get stolen. So I personally will never ship RORO, but tons of people do and tons of people have no issues whatsoever. That's option number one, somewhere in the range of, let's say, $1,000 to $3,000 US from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world. So if you don't want to go with RORO, like me, the next option is to put your vehicle inside of a shipping container. This is kind of the traditional or the old school way of doing it because shipping containers, they go all over the world. So it doesn't even matter like where you're trying to get to, you can ship a shipping container into there, which means you can probably make it work. So the cheapest container is what's called a standard 20-foot container. And so this steel box, it's 20 feet long, which is plenty long enough for most kind of regular 4x4s. The gotcha though, in terms of getting your vehicle in there, it has to fit through the door. And the door is only about 7'6" high, which is about 2.28 meters. So this is a real restriction. And for me, it means that my overlanding vehicles will never be higher than that because getting it inside of a 20-foot container is the cheapest, safest way to ship it around the ocean. And people go to great lengths to squeeze it through that door. They will lower their air pressures to basically nothing. I've heard of people pulling out their coil springs so it sits on the bump stops just while you drive it in, the length of the container. I even heard of one guy who put on different rims and didn't even have any tires at all. And he literally pushed it and dragged it in just on the steel rims sitting on the ground. Obviously the rims were destroyed. That's a $500 expense instead of having to spend thousands more to try and fit it in something bigger. If your vehicle doesn't fit inside a 20-foot container, you have some more options. The next size up is called a 40-foot, and it's exactly the same thing, it's just twice as long. So this option works really well if you find someone to share with, because then you can put two vehicles in the container. And that's exactly what I did from Panama to Colombia, found a French couple, and so that way then the costs aren't quite doubled, because some things like paperwork fees and destination charges, they're kind of done per container. So all told, all done, you can be cheaper to share a container instead of each having your own 20-foot container. And the other big advantage of a 40-foot is you can get a container called a 40-foot high cube container. And these typically don't cost any more money than a regular 40-foot. The difference is they're a bit taller, and most importantly, the door opening is taller. On the regular 20-foot container, the door was about 7'6" high, whereas on the 40-foot high cube, it's 8'5" high. So that's a big difference, about 2.56 meters. And so again, if you've got a bigger vehicle like a full-size US pickup, or you have a big rooftop tent on the top, that could really help you to get your vehicle inside that container. If you have to go by yourself, obviously it's going to cost a lot more money than in a 20-footer. But if you're doing a common shipping route like Panama to Colombia, or from somewhere in South America back to North America, chances are you're gonna find another overlander to share with. That's really nice. You can still squeeze your big vehicle into a container and hopefully it won't be too expensive. In terms of costs for the container, from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world, you're probably gonna be starting at about $2,000 and maybe going up to $3,000, possibly $4,000. Again, depending on exactly where you're going. Panama to Colombia is such a common route and it's so short. A friend of mine, Joanne, who did it just a year ago, she spent $1,200 sharing a 40-footer with someone else. So $1,200 per vehicle to get from Panama to Colombia inside a container. When I went from Canada to Europe, I had it in a 20-foot container, and I think my final all-told price was about $3,000 US. And coming back from Egypt to Canada was more of a pain in the neck because Egypt is ridiculous for paperwork. And so I spent a little over $4,000 for that route. And it would have been about half that if I went RORO, but those shipping ports are notorious for corruption and problems. And again, not worth it for me. So I spent the extra money, and when my Jeep arrived, it was utterly untouched. And the great thing about putting your vehicle inside a container is that typically you're the one who gets to drive it in the container, and then you can stand there and watch while the guys, they tie it down to the floor of the container. You get to lock the doors, and then when you walk out of the container, guys are gonna lock and close the door, and they put a special custom seal on it right in front of you. And so that means nobody else is going to touch the vehicle until you're standing there at the destination port and they open it again right in front of your face. You have the keys and nobody can get inside the container for the duration of its voyage. So it's almost impossible for someone to steal anything from the vehicle. With all of these shipping options too, you can add insurance if you want. Usually they do it at about 10% of the value of whatever you're insuring. So if I declared this thing for 20 grand, let's say, it's gonna cost me about 2 grand to insure it for that voyage. In terms of how much weight you can put in those containers, it's not even a factor. In a standard 20-footer, you can put about 48,000 pounds. So obviously any vehicle is no problem. And in the 40-footers, you can put about 58,000 pounds. So even with 2 big 4-wheel drives, you're not going to be anywhere near the weight limit, so it's not even something you have to think about. If your vehicle doesn't fit inside even a 40-foot high cube container, you still have other options other than RORO. And the most common one is usually called like a flat top container, or sometimes they even just say flat deck. And what that means is you kind of drive onto what is essentially a container, but it has no roof and no walls. So it doesn't matter how high your vehicle is, as long as it isn't insanely wide, they'll basically still just pick it up with a crane and put it straight on the deck of the ship. A lot of people who have big unimogs or huge overlanding rigs, they ship this way and they have a lot of success and no problems. The big downside here is that costs start to go up significantly. So you're probably gonna spend something like $5,000 to $10,000 to try and cross an ocean with a bigger vehicle that doesn't fit inside a shipping container. In fact, it's entirely possible you could spend $15,000. So you can see this is a major reason why I want a vehicle that fits inside a 20-footer, and I'm not interested. As soon as I see a vehicle that's ginormous, no, that's not for me because I want to go international. So those are the 2 main options that I would say 99% of overlanders go with. Here, the motorbike people have a huge advantage. It's really common to just air freight a motorbike. If you take off the front and back wheel, you can pretty much stuff it down until it fits on a pallet, and usually airlines will even give you a crate. And so you can put your whole bike in there and your panniers and all your gear. And it actually isn't overly expensive. Lots of people spend maybe $1,000. That's a really good reason why, fly to Nepal and ride around there on a motorbike is going to be so much cheaper than trying to ship your 4-wheel drive to that part of the world. And then there is one other option that people take for both 4-wheel drives or large vehicles and motorbikes, and that's to actually ride along on one of these enormous cargo ships. So kind of one company has pioneered this. They're called Grimaldi. I'll throw a link down to show you what's possible. So friends of mine actually did it, Shannon and Mike. They rode motorbikes all around the world. And the most common route goes from Uruguay in South America over to Europe. And you can get off either in Belgium or you can get off in Germany. And so the deal is you drive your vehicle onto this enormous ship. They told me that their bikes were inside like a locked cage and they could see them, go and visit them while they were on the ship. And then basically you're on the container ship with the crew for the duration of the voyage across the ocean. So you get to have this awesome experience. You know, they cross the Atlantic, which obviously is a pretty cool thing to do, and they got to go with their motorbikes. All in all told, for the motorbikes and for the two of them, they spent about $5,500 US, which sounds like a lot of money, but if you think about it, they didn't have to buy plane tickets for themselves, and they didn't have to pay food and accommodation for those like weeks that it would have taken the bikes to cross the ocean because they were on the ship the whole time. So actually, it's a really cool experience, and I'd love to do it one day. Kind of the downside is that there aren't many routes in the world where you're allowed to do it. Grimaldi will take people from North America to Europe and back again on their container ships, but you can't take a vehicle or a motorbike with you. For whatever reason, legalities, who knows, they just don't have the facilities to do that. So it is an option, but it's kind of a rare option depending on where you're going in the world. And if that's something you'd like to learn more about, Mike and Shannon's website is actually an amazing resource of all their expense reports and their entire trip from their ride around the world, and have a really good page with lots of question and answers and details about how they did this voyage with Grimaldi. So I'll throw a link down in the description to their website. You definitely should give it a read, and then click around the rest of their site as well. There's a ton of good information there. And when I said you're gonna find other overlanders that have done the same thing, this is exactly what I mean. Mike and Shannon are just normal people. They decided to go on this massive adventure and live their dream, and they documented all of it for us, for free. Just because they wanted to help other people go out and do it. So start Googling, start searching for the information you want, join a bunch of travelers forums, spend time on the Horizons Unlimited bulletin board, and you're gonna find there are a lot of people out there who've already done or who are doing what you wanna do around the world. So there you have it. That's how you can ship your vehicle to a whole new continent. And I know that's a ton of information to take in, but the thing to remember is lots of people are doing this, and shipping companies are experts at shipping stuff around the world. They want your business. This is how they make money. So whatever it is, wherever you want to go, you will get it done. You will find a way. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please hit that thumbs up button and make sure you subscribe. As again, there's plenty more practical real world videos like this coming in the future. So as always, let me know in the comments how helpful was this and what you'd like me to cover next time. I'm happy to talk about anything and everything related to overlanding around the world. So until next time, have fun out there.